Let's welcome Dr. Jayalakshmi, eminent microbiologist, and all her this thing. She is a research committee member of Dr. MGR Medical University, as well as I know her as NABL assessor because she assessed my lab.
I saw so many familiar faces and I've seen them all online.
As well as so many other accreditation bodies like JCI, she is also
So thank you very much, sir.
surveyor, and also she also a member of the CAHO and program director, CPSC, then CAHO member research committee and all other things, all these things. You please
Yes, sir.
read this, and I won't waste much time. I request her to go ahead with the presentation because this is a very crucial matter. Although we talk a lot about this quality control issue, when it comes to a changeover from 2012 to 22, it's a real challenge for us. So she will enlighten us on this topic. Welcome, madam.
Thank you very much, sir. The first slide, please. First of all, big thank you to Mindray and Shama, and also to the CAHO. Very happy because Dr. Aparna pulled me into this. So thank you to be part of your, amongst you all today. It's a post-lunch session, and I'm going to talk to you something which is 1.5 years old, and probably a lot of labs have started to implement them in their own labs as well. But let's look at what we will want to do in our own labs when we are in the journey of these implementation. So I'm going to just take to the key points only. And so I'll be looking at just quickly into the ISO standard just to understand how this ISO 15189-2022 comes in and what are the key changes in the standard and how do we implement them. So the ISO 15189, ISO would say it's an independent, non-governmental international organization since 1947. However, currently with 169 members, it shares knowledge and develops voluntary consensus-based market-relevant international standards that supports innovation and provides solution to global challenges. So with changing techniques, technology, the way we look at things in the laboratories, a lot of things change. However, ISO has multiple verticals, looks at multiple things for standardization. We're going to look at the ISO 15189, which is a globally approved standard for medical laboratory practice. So the ISO 15189 is formally recognized by an authorized national accreditation body. In our country, it would be NABL, that a medical laboratory is capable of doing a particular activity as per the standard. That's what it would say. So the revision happens every 5 years, with the first one in 2003, and the next one in 2007 and 2012. So we didn't have it in 2017 because it is based on consensus, and that time it was it did not go through an approval for the next edition. Therefore, there is a wait, and then came with the 4th edition, which is the ISO 15189-2022. So there's a 10 years gap from the previous edition to this one. But there's a huge change in some of them, and there are not much of changes to what we see, but how we see is going to be changing. So let's look at the ISO 15189-2022 standards. This is based on the evolving medical laboratory markets. Most of it is now international, and a lot of tests are done in one laboratory with multiple sample collecting points across the country or sometimes overseas as well, and done in one single facility. Or there could be a lab which is doing an exclusive, very specialized test in one particular lab. So it has to be relevant and applicable in both these situations as well. So these are technology of AI. We are moving into the point of care testings, and there are a lot of tests like what Dr. Tupil sir was saying. In 10 years, you're going to get all of these tests in a POCT mode. So we have to upgrade ourselves to the way we look at these tests in the standards that we need to follow for ourselves in our laboratories, as well as for the accrediting bodies to accredit as well. So the objective of this particular document is very, very focused to look at the welfare of a patient. So patient is the center of this document, and satisfaction of the laboratory users, who are the clinicians or the consultants who refer samples to the test or to these laboratories. So they have to produce, or there should be a confidence in releasing out a quality and a competent test report from these medical laboratories. So that's the objective of this particular standard itself. Now, I mean, this whole standard in the document itself. Now, what does the document contain? Okay, it contains requirements on how these medical laboratories should plan and implement actions to address basically the risks and look for opportunities for improvement. Why is it speaking about the risks when it is saying something else in the previous one, where it is looking at the patient as well as the user or clinical lab users, as well as looking at the quality and competence? Because at every level, you're going to look at them and look at the risk involved to either the patient, the sample, the healthcare professional, or the environment. So a lot of focus is given to risk in this particular standard. So it might have been used 8 to 12 times in the previous edition, but it has been used about 86 times in this current edition on the word risk, and implementing risk is an important thing. Now, what is the benefit? Why should you do this? What does this 2022 offer, right? It increases the effectiveness of the management system. Okay, it's going to be applicable not just for the laboratory, or it's also applicable to the entire organization where the lab is a part of. And it has to be talking to each other at multiple levels, so they have to be uniformed. So it kind of brings about that clarity in the document. Decreasing the probability of an invalid test, therefore there is a safety to the patient and a good satisfactory customer at the end. Lab safety is a priority here, reducing potential harms to the patient in terms of reducing errors, to the lab personnel who's working in the facility considering the biorisk that they would have, the public in general, and the environment as well. So all its means, it kind of looks at the safety. Does it apply only to the laboratories? No. The same standard applies to other healthcare services as well. It includes for diagnostic imaging, respiratory therapy, blood bank, and transfusion divisions, as well as the physiological sciences. So the same document in its existing form would be applicable to all of these, which means there may not be a mention of lab everywhere to say so, because it's going to be applicable for a diagnostic other facility as well. This kind of helps. Having this in a similar form in another system would also help in assisting in exchange of informations and harmonizations of methods and procedures across. So you could have them similar so that you can compare them and brings about more clarity in understanding a patient more than just a test. So what are the key changes? I'm sure this has been told multiple times. Almost every day there is a session, at a point of time from December onwards more. And then every day there was a webinar to say so. And everybody knows that this is going to be in alignment with the ISO IEC 17025-2017 document, where the management requirements usually appears in the end of the document. And here also you would go in a line. In its structure, it applies exactly like the 17025-2017 document. That's the alignment it takes. Also, it includes the requirements of a point of care testing, which was previously in ISO 22870-2016 edition. With this, that becomes redundant or cannot be used any further. However, with people applying for POCT alone for its accreditation, it would be still valid till this document gets completely implementable or completely mandated to be implemented from the December 2025 onwards, right? Till then, you can go with this POCT ISO 22870 document if there is a laboratory which is going for accreditation for its POCT testing. And it also increased, they kind of has an increased emphasis on the risk management. So that's a change. So these are the key three changes that it would have in its structure, in addition of a new testing modality which is going to become the future, as well as the emphasis being on risk, because everything is based on risk in this particular document. Now, this document also aligns, like I told you, with risk assessment. It takes up the ISO 22367 document. For the lab safety, ISO 15190 document. Sampling and transportation, ISO 20658 document, as well as of course, the format of this is going to be based on ISO 17025 2017 document. The content, if you look at the document as such, okay, there is a lot of clarity that brings into the content in the way it's been written, and there are certain verbs used. Where it says, when it says shall, it indicates it's a definite requirement. If it says should, it's a recommendation. If it says may, probably it's a permission. When it says can, it's a possibility or a capability that can be considered. However, if you would see the document, many times you would see this shall statement is followed by a phrase called as appropriate, which means there is a flexibility in the document. It does not say that for everybody it should be shall only. Like I mentioned to you, when it says shall, it should be a requirement for sure. However, this shall does not mean that it should always be so. So there should be, as appropriate to the situation for the testing that it is required, it may be applicable. I've just added one of the clause as an example, 6.6.3, where it would come at the end. Okay, so that it's been added to those. So if you would look at some shall, it will also have these as appropriate, which means there is a flexibility of its implementation. So it's more challenging for an assessor than an SSE now, because the SSE has all the liberty to do however they want to their laboratory, and an assessor should understand what the lab is talking, how are they doing it. So what is that why are they bringing this context, and why are they having this document, etc. So, these are the 8 clauses or sections of the ISO 15189:2022. The previous one had how many clauses? 5? Yes, where the 1, 2, 3 were the same, which is the scope, the normative references and terms and definitions were the same. I don't know if you can read. Oh yeah, you can read here. So the scope, the normative references, and the terms and definitions are all the same. Okay. However, what we did have in the 2012, where the quality management systems requirement and technical requirement. Now, what do we have here? You have a general requirement, structural and governance requirement, resource requirements, process requirement, and the management systems requirement. So the quality management systems requirement is now in the end, like I told you, the 17025 document, it is aligned to. And here you would going to see that in this, instead of a quality management system, it's now the quality systems requirement that you see. Now, are these completely the same? The scope is the same? No, we've added point of care testing, so therefore there is an addition to this. Okay, is the normative references same? Almost yes, it's the same. ISO IEC 17,000 to 2022, and of course the 17025 2017. But if you look at the terms and definition, I'm so sorry about this. This I don't think anybody can read. I can't see it on my screen though. This one has 15 new terminologies added. Some of them are modified terms. Some of them are very new terms. For example, the bias, so the bias and the measurement bias is not there earlier. The clinical decision limits not earlier, okay? Or the commutability was not there, or the complaint, the consultant is not there. The external quality assessment is not there in the terminologies there earlier. In vitro diagnostic medical devices not there in the previous system. So you didn't have quite a few of them which are included. The previous one had 27 terms and definition. This one has 32. Some of them removed, some of them added, some of them modified where the content looks more clearer. Okay. So quickly looking into, of course, the general requirements. Let's go slide-wise. So here in the general requirements, it looks at impartiality, okay, which is The same, however, it emphasizes more confidentiality where it applies to both the internal and the external personals involved. Then requirements regarding patients. Here it looks at the patient's well-being, safety and rights as the most important thing, and they are the primary considerations that it looks at. So that's the general requirement. If you look at the structural and governance requirement, it looks at the legal identity. So whom should I hold responsible? Some things go wrong. The lab director, who is a key of the laboratory itself, whose responsibilities definitely required, the lab activities, including the POCT added into that, the structure and authority, giving the organogram completely in saying who's responsible for what. Objectives and policies clearly defined, does not clear, it says that you need to surely have a quality policy there, and the risk assessment all of these are based on the risk assessment and risk management included in the system, where you need to establish, meaning you should look at the risk evolved at every level, and you see that it gets implemented. And once it is implemented, it becomes a responsibility of everyone who has instituted that to maintain it as well. So these three things are important, and the responsibility of seeing this happening is the lab director or somebody the person can nominate to or delegate to get into the responsibility. So evaluation and modifications based on its performance is done by the lab director. So the focus here initiates with risk. Definitely a very, very important move in this particular document. The resource requirement, it looks at every type of resource in terms of personnel, people working within and out of the laboratories. Facilities, the previous one would look at it as an accommodation. Here it specifically looks at facilities and environmental condition. The previous document would look at as lab equipment. Here it would specifically say only an equipment. Calibration and meteorological traceability, reagents and consumable, all kinds of service agreements that the laboratory does with the other personals that they would be involved in, and externally provided products and services, including the referral labs that you would have. So all of these are addressed in the resource requirement. The process requirement is on the performance of the test itself, looking at the pre-examination process, where the test request form, the TRF we've been mentioning, has been mentioned as an examination request now. And you can also give an oral request. You need to document the way you will capture the oral request, because you need to know how this is being done. The examination process, including the verification and validation of the test that's been introduced. Post-examination processes, including the storage and handling of samples. It doesn't mention it as retention. It mentions as a post examination handling of samples, which means how do you handle them, how long you hold them, what do you do to them, where do you store them, how do you discard them as per the biomedical waste rules. Control of data and information management. So more is discussed about this, because this is how it's happening in most places. There are still laboratories doing manually, but many have a hybrid mode where you have a manual and LMI, you have the LIS system there, or you would have to include the importance of a cyber security, the way you will handle your data, how the confidentiality is maintained at multiple levels, what are the contingency plan whenever there is when something goes wrong, okay, and how do you capture the downtime, and how do you do the continuity. So all of these are being discussed in more details. Of course, also is the complaints and looking at multiple levels of capturing process and addressing the complaint, because here again, the focus is on a patient. If the patient is complaining something, that's taken really seriously. So the last is, of course, looking at the emergency preparedness planning in all its processes need to be looked at. The last one is the management system requirement, which used to be the quality management system, which now is under the general requirements. Then the management system documentation, including documenting all those which are internal and external. External includes maybe a regulatory requirement, the legal law, or everything that you would have from an external body that is applicable for the laboratory need to be documented. It also clearly gives the control of records, all types of records, and how long do you retain this record, how do you manage these records, and what do you do with these records later, and how do you create these records also are described in detail. Okay, action to address risks and opportunities for improvement as a continual quality improvement process, looking at quality indicators and seeing how you can improve everyday functioning, everyday activity as a continuous process of improvement in the facility. And then non-conformities and corrective actions as a requirement, where you don't look at it as a preventive now, where you're addressing all of them as corrective, right? So what are the other supporting documents that the lab need to look at? Just the ISO 15189-2022 does not suffice. You need to reference them to ISO 9001, which is a quality management system document, which is some other document where you take all your inputs from to create. However, the 17025 is taken from that, which looks at testing and calibration laboratories. The difference is that here you're looking at the medical laboratories. 22367 is for the risk management. 15190 is the laboratory safety. The 3501 is 5001 is the biorisk management. 20658 kind of looks at the sample collection and transport. 20914 measurement uncertainty, which is a focus in this particular document. 19011 internal audit of management systems. 17043, where it is important to look at the proficiency testing and EQA, because it is no more called as interlab comparison. It is specifically mentioned as a external quality assurance program only. And for the internal quality control, the IQC, you can define how many times, how you would do based on a risk that you would do in your own laboratories. And you can, so every assessor in the future is going to ask you about how did you derive this? How are you maintaining it, and how would you want to take it forward? And 22583 is about the POCT operator, and 27001 is looking at the information security or the cyber security. Quickly looking at the summary of changes that we see. The priority is for the technical requirements on how you perform the test, and the management requirement definitely appearing at the end of the document only. POCT is a requirement. Emphasis on the risk management. However, there is a flexibility given into how do you choose and implement them, and what method you choose, and how do you document. So it's in your free. So you can choose whichever method you want to do that. So because the most commonly done is, you're trying to take, risk assessment using the severity, the occurrence, and the detectability score. You could do it in whatever style works well for you, and then capture it the best way and continue to perform. Okay, then requirement has been now, some of them combined, some separated, some of them elaborated, some of them highlighted further. So if you look at the previous document to the current document, there is not much of a change in some of them, just that they are clubbed together and put elsewhere. That's it. Okay, but you need to know where this one is coming. Okay, it provides comprehensive guide for controlling the documents in terms of how to create them, how to amend them, and how to retain these records. By the way, no more it's called as revised reports. I mean, it's going to be called only as an amended report, even in our reports that we will be amending in the future. It's less prescriptive. It doesn't say this is how you should do it. It gives you a freedom and flexibility to do however you want, looking at your process and outcome and not looking at your procedures alone, right? So the quality manual is no longer a requirement or obligatory. You could have if you would want to, but it's not a must that you have. Requirement for a designated quality manager has also been eliminated from this. LIMS, I told you, the cybersecurity, the offsite management in case you're storing it in a cloud, the contingency and preparedness should be there. The most important is a strong emphasis on validity pertained to clinical decision making. This is something that has been emphasized, enhancing that wonderful connection between the lab as well as the clinician who is sending the samples to us. And that's what we've been talking so much through the day on how it is important that you interact with your clinicians to understand why a lab tests are performing or behaving a particular way. Okay, now that in 2022 December it was released, for any document to be implemented completely, the time given is 3 years, which means 2025
we
onwards.
Have got 2 minutes more.
Yes, done.
Okay, thank you.
So we only have, I have 2 minutes and we have 2 years for us to implement this 2022 document. And for the implementation, it's very important that the key persons understands and orients themselves completely to the standard. They list the specific requirement of the lab because very unique for themselves, wherein you do a gap analysis, identify which are the areas which you need to address in the current existing practice of your 2012 to that of the required 2022 standards. Need to have a transition plan in place and define timelines as well. Train all lab personnel on the standard, assign roles and responsibilities for implementation. It has to be innovative so that it gets implemented better. And it has to be very proactive to mitigate implementation challenges, because any implementation would take a lot of people finding it very difficult and very hard to understand and implement. So you need to have some innovative ways to do it, and because that is given easily in the document itself. So reassess and audit the facility to see your gaps and then readdress them. So that's how you need to do your implementation. That's how we have started our journey of 2022 in our labs. So the take home is that the ISO 1518922 is risk-based, very specifically patient-centered. It includes POCT, provides flexibility for implementation. You could do it the way you like to do. Okay, encourages continuous improvement of your test processes and contributes to the betterment of the healthcare system. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam. Now it's time to take few questions from the audience.
Ma'am, one question. Is there any update on the concurrent document the NABL prepares, when it will come?
What is that, sir?
NABL 112?
It is getting prepared. It would be released soon, sir.
Okay.
There is one document getting prepared, yes. Inputs have been sought from a lot of people. Experts are working, and it is going to come soon.
Okay. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Thank you.
So may I request Dr. Mohanty to hand over the certificate to Dr. Jayalakshmi?